Hail, fellow dungeon divers and aspiring adventurers alike. Welcome to Mungeons, a podcast of exciting escapades, daring deeds, and hardy heroes. I am Eric of House Marker, your host and guide. Today, we ride for the castle of Carl of House Bissinger, a brother of the Beard and fellow dungeon master. To those of you new to tabletop role-playing games, fear not, I will educate you as we ride. Now mount up. Role-playing games, or RPGs, are fairly self-explanatory. You simply take on another role, just like an actor would, and pretend that you are that person. If you've ever played dress-up as a young lad or lass, you have role-played. Tabletop RPGs are simply played on a table, where you set up a scaled-down picture of what's happening in your game. Oftentimes, this includes miniatures, maps, and dice, which you roll to determine whether your character overcomes an obstacle or if they fail to do so. As far as rules, they're determined by the dungeon master or the DM. The DM runs the game for the players. He writes the story, sets up the maps, the obstacles players will face, the encounters with non-player characters, also known as NPCs. Whether friendly to the players or hostile, he takes the role of the rest of the characters in the story. He determines where the story will go and what the players will have to do. One of the most popular of these games is Dungeons & Dragons, or D&D, as it is sometimes known. It was published in 1974, and it had more than 3 million players around 1981. By 2004, it had over 20 million. But look here, we have arrived at Castle Bissinger. Come, the stable boy will take care of our horses. Follow me. Now, I must tell you the nature of our visit. RPGs such as Dungeons & Dragons are known to some as evil, even of the devil himself, especially in Christian circles. Lord Carl has heard these concerns and wishes to speak his thoughts on the matter. Today, we will discuss the morality of tabletop RPGs. Carl, thank you for joining me on the first episode of Mungeons.
Thank you for having me.
So I would like to start by asking you a question about yourself, so my fellow listeners can get a feel of who you are. Tabletop games are essentially an interactive story. What do you love most about storytelling?
I think storytelling, my favorite part about that is actually the listeners. It's more about the community that, that Dungeons & Dragons kind of creates. I love everything about stories fictional. It takes me into a place where I've never been, and for a moment you can kind of insert yourself into that story.
You mentioned the listeners, or the audience, in this case the players, playing a big role in your experience of D&D. What does that look like, and how does that differ from other forms of storytelling?
Well, you see what works and what doesn't. It's one thing writing a story down on paper and you're just reading it yourself, versus when you tell that story out loud to others, you can see and even feel what's wrong with the story. You're like, oh, that doesn't make sense, or you tell that story out loud and it's like opening up for a committee to change it. Because when you give them any choice and they can make any choice that they want in that game, you may put forth a story path and they're gonna veer way left. They're gonna go, no, I don't wanna go that way, I wanna go this way. And it changes your story, even to a point where you're like, I like that better. I like, they took my story and they made it something else. And if you play once a week, you're always opening yourself up to criticism. You know what I mean? You're putting your story out there. And during the game, you can kind of tell when the players don't really know what's going on, or the story doesn't totally click, and so they ask a bunch of questions because there might be a plot hole or not enough information previously given
So what was your first introduction into Dungeons and Dragons? Like, how did you first hear about it?
Yeah, well, so actually, I'm a worship leader here at IHOP, and one of the worship leaders, he's in St. Louis now, but Nathan Pankey, he used to be a worship leader here. Him and his wife grabbed me and my wife, and we went to Tabletop, which is, has tables and people game and play board games there as a community.
Yeah.
And he just ran us a game, handed us a character and said, you are this person. It was really cool as just an actor. I mean, you're role-playing a character, and it's complete improv. It's complete improv. Now, you can have, a background story to that character, like you can write that, and then it's your job as the actor to take that background and kind of let that background infiltrate everything you say and everything you do, and would this line up with the backstory? But you're constantly, it's all on top of your head,
Yeah.
And so that was my first experience. It was obviously extremely alluring, and my wife enjoyed it, and we all enjoyed it, and later on continued to do it. So.
Yeah. So games like D&D are usually frowned upon in Christian culture. Why do you think that is?
What I'd heard about Dungeons and Dragons is that, probably from those tracks. Have you ever seen that track that came out?
The Jack Chick track. It was Dark Dungeons.
Where the person, the daughter or whatever, got involved in Dungeons and Dragons, and one of the members of the Dungeons and Dragon, ends up killing herself or something, and and then the mom's like, see, this is blah, blah, blah. And so I think that was my first, when I was in Teen Challenge, they made us renounce all these things. If we had any activity at all in, like a Magic 8 Ball or whatever, all that kind of stuff. Anything I had to, you had to renounce, and D&D was on there, but I had never played it at that point in time, so.
Yeah, but it was definitely, that was kind of the message you were getting.
Yeah.
In your past.
From certain Christians. Now others they could care less, and they see it differently.
When you first started playing, were you concerned with it being demonic?
Not
as you were playing?
Not even close. That's not where I fall, and where I I just don't see it that way.
Yeah.
I just think that there's things that you and I do, Eric, that attract more demonic influence, like our bitterness, our anger, our greed, our covetousness. I mean, that is such a big thing that nobody talks about.
Yeah.
Like it commands our lives. Like, I want this next thing.
What are some of the main concerns among Christians regarding D&D?
The main thing that people have wrong with Dungeons and Dragons is the fact that there is monsters that are literally demons. There's demons that you fight. There's demons in that realm. So Christians don't, anything that has a demon in it is bad, and that it influences the Christian soul, in a negative way. Those monsters, or that type of lore, or that type of, maybe that monster did something that is kind of like really like, whoa, that's like gross, whatever. Yeah. And so I think that's where probably a lot of Christians have issues with that, is that there are literally demon monsters that you fight. There's magic, just like I had a friend that his mom wouldn't let him go see Harry Potter, because it was witches and magic, and the Lord condemns mediums and speaking with spirits and, obviously worshiping other gods. And that's an aspect of the D&D world and fantasy, is that there are, pantheon of gods, and half of them are evil and half of them are good, and so even, divine wars going on, and my response to that, though, is, well, isn't that what's going on right now? Isn't that where we are right now? There's demons that I'm fighting every day of my life. And my main thing is to not, align with it.
So all that said, do you think D&D can be used for evil?
Yeah. Well, I kind of come from the perspective that, this earth is neutral. And this phone is neutral. I can do something bad with it. I can do something good with it. But this is a material, complete neutral thing, just like a gun.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, a gun is a neutral item that can be used for good or evil. Same with David with his harp. He's just playing a neutral thing, and it's making demons go away from Saul.
It's not the power of the harp.
It's the wielder.
Yeah.
It's the wielder. It's not the one, you know what I mean? It's not the sword. It's the wielder that makes the choice of good and evil.
Right, right.
So Dungeons and Dragons, when wielded by an evil person, it's probably not going to be the most moral or Christian environment.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But if the wielder is a strong believer who loves Jesus, and in fact, the entire group also has that vision for their life to love one another above themselves, then that atmosphere is life-giving.
Yeah.
It's fellowship. It brings brothers together, and it gets them working through relational issues that they have with one another.
Yeah, yeah. On the opposite side of the spectrum, do you think it can be used as a ministry tool?
Well, I mean, even let's just say I used it as a ministry tool. I once a week I go to tabletop and I just say, hey, there's a game. Anyone can just show up and sit down every Saturday. I get all sorts of people. People that don't believe in God at all. And I present them a story, and I show them how I am, who I am, and I develop a relationship with them, and I love them. When the guy locks his keys in the car, I go out and I help him.
Sure.
I just do those little things over and over, and over a year, you will gain his trust because you loved him. And then issues are going to come up, and he's going to see how you handle issues with other players and how you're constantly promoting love and selflessness. The guy's like, man, what do you have? Why are you like that? You get to have an impact on people. What kind of fruit is going to come out of that if you're aiming for a ministry is you're going to get relational, you're going to get to love them, serve them when they need to move, give them money,
Yeah.
when they're in trouble, you get to, and when they're having a hard time, and when they're doing something wrong, you get to speak into their life and direct them to a better path. And there's going to be fights, people are not going to like each other, and you're going to have to pastor that and shepherd that and shepherd their hearts. There's a pastoral element.
A dungeon
Yeah,
master.
because just like when you spend an hour or two with any human being every week, or a group of human beings, just like a friendship group, it's about the same thing. You're interacting with one another and working out your issues and showing one another how to love.
Can some people get too immersed in the game? Perhaps for some it's too much?
So fantasy as a mental state, where you're actually, the two realities have blended together in a way. You're using it as an escape from a reality that you don't like. I do think that there are people out there, and there are documentaries out there that express this type of obsession, where the person is so obsessed with the game that their life actually comes second. But that's just, that is the same with every media. It's all about moderation in all things. Eating only bananas is going to hurt you. So I do think that there's an obsession that can form that is not foreign to every other obsession people have out there. If there were a person so obsessed where I could see the issue at hand, constantly bringing in real life, asking them about their wife. How's your wife doing? How's work going? Bring back. If you see the person clearly escaping responsibility, through what you guys are doing, you know, to point them back to the things that matter in life. Yeah, I mean, asking someone to leave the party, and it's not a big deal. It's just, hey, I don't think this is good for you, man. I see like negative patterns developing.
Yeah.
You know, the answer isn't to kick out people, but the answer is to give them chance over chance over chance, time over time, and work with them over time. Yeah. But I think that it's not unreasonable to ask someone to leave, you know, for their own good. Oh, I just want to say one more thing. One more thing.
Yeah, please.
A lot of people don't know this, and Dungeons and Dragons was made by a guy named Gary Gygax, and he, professing Southern Baptist till the day he died, went to church every Sunday, loved Jesus. So, you know, people will let their kids watch The Lord of the Rings because it was, even though the Balrog is a demon, like there's a demon in that movie.
Yeah.
But they'll let them watch it because it's made by a Christian. Or C.S. Lewis, some of the scary stuff that goes on, and they'll let them watch it because it was made by, you know, but if Harry Potter's made by a witch, like we won't let them watch that, which I get because I think, again, the medium, it's dependent upon who's wielding the media. A lot of people don't understand that it was made just by a Christian who loved Jesus. Who loved Jesus. So, there you go.
Well, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much for being the first guest on the show, Carl. And thank you, listeners, for tuning in. I encourage everyone who hasn't played to at least try it out, but make sure to play with a group that you can trust, one that won't cause you to stumble in your faith. And if it does cause you to do so, please stop playing immediately. All I ask is that you try it for yourself. If you're interested, you can find a few of my own recommendations in the description below. And be sure to be on the lookout for another episode of Mungeons. I trust you can find your way back to the stables. Your gallant steed awaits. Happy questing, and good night.